Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day... I don't even know what day it is, to be honest. Some of you might have already seen the first video we did today. We got what looked like shocking news earlier today, that there was a fire at the location of another historic mill in the region, in Kelowna. Well, the good news is that it turns out that it wasn't the old building itself. Turns out that it was another structure on the property. So that 1871 mill in Kelowna is still standing, and that's really, really great news. So, feeling better about it, decided to come back into our summer kitchen to do what we had originally planned to do today, which is make Bannock. Bannock is really fascinating food on a whole bunch of levels. I mean, on one level, it's just bread. It's super simple bread made of flour and water and baking soda or baking powder and salt. And then you either fry it up or bake it, or there's lots of different ways to cook it. But it has all sorts of associations. Lots of people think of Bannock as being either pioneer food, or they think of it as being indigenous people's food. There are certainly strong relationships between Bannock and First Nations all through North America, from the Inuit to the Apache to the Okanagan peoples. Many different indigenous cultures claim Bannock as an important part of their heritage. Now, Bannock as a name actually starts in Scotland. It's a modification on a word that basically means cooked dough. And bannocks were traditionally made out of all sorts of grains. You could make it out of oatmeal, you could make it out of rye, you could make it out of, whatever you had available. Here in North America, pre-settlement, pre-contact, it's clear that many indigenous groups were using starchy bulbs like camas, or corn or things like that to create the flours that they were then cooking into something that sort of co-evolved and joined together into what we think of as Bannock today. Now, I've already got our wood stove behind me here, heating up, and in fact I've even put a skillet on the stove full of oil. I'm just using regular vegetable oil today. And basically we're going to make the dough and put it into the pan to let it fry up. Now, there are lots of other ways traditionally to cook Bannock. Bannock is one of those all-purpose things. You could do it as I'm doing it on the top of the stove. You could bake it in the oven if you wanted to. Many people have fond memories of making bread around the campfire, where you take the dough and you wrap a green stick with the dough and toast it over a campfire to make yourself that kind of Bannock. Lots of indigenous cultures made ovens of various kinds out of clay, out of rock, and baked them in those ovens instead. So there's lots of different varieties of Bannock. There's lots of different recipes for Bannock. There's lots of cultural significance, both from the old world and the new world. And they all kind of collide together into this one thing that everybody just thinks of as, oh my goodness, that's tasty, that's fantastic. So, let's just check on the stove here for a second and make sure that our fire is doing well. So, our firebox is right here. We're just going to go in and check, and sure enough, got a good hot raging fire. I've got my skillet full of oil ready to go here. It's not quite, but almost starting to shimmer, which means it's almost up to the right temperature to cook on. So we're going to go back and deal with our ingredients. For all of you just joining in, good morning and welcome to the summer kitchen here at the grist mill. Camera management, always an issue, but we're looking good. Okay, so first thing we need 4 cups of flour. If any of you want to write down this recipe for yourself for later, go ahead, grab a pen and a paper. I will repeat the ingredient list a couple of times with the measurements so that you can write this down and try it yourself. So first things we need 4 cups of flour, and I've got a big container of flour here, and I'm going to put it right into my bowl. 2, we got 3 and 4 cups of flour. So we got lots of flour in our bowl. Next, we need 2 tablespoons of baking powder. Not baking soda, baking powder. And 2 tablespoons might sound like a lot, but it's the only thing that's going to make this light and fluffy. So we want to put a decent amount in so that it lifts up and has that bread-like texture. Now, you can make bannock with yeast if you wanted, but it requires waiting, and we're not in the mood to wait today. We're just going to make this and enjoy it. So, 4 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder. We're going to put in about a half a teaspoon of salt. I just have the salt shaker, so I'm just going to estimate and pour it in. It doesn't have to be exact. Truthfully, salt is what makes it tasty, so put in the amount of salt that you need. Last but not least, we are going to put in about 1.5 to 2 cups of water. The exact amount of water really depends on all sorts of things, like how humid it is that day and what kind of flour you have. So these recipes are always going to be approximate when it comes to something like water. So we're just going to put it in until it gets to be a nice sticky dough that holds together. So I'm going to put in about a cup right now. And I know you didn't see that, but it's hard for me to show you down on the cutting board here. So I'm just going to have to mix it awkwardly this way. And maybe it looks right to you, but it sure doesn't feel right to me. So we'll mix that up. We definitely need to add some more water, so we'll do that. I'll just keep adding splashes of water in as we're going. I'm going to put it down here so that I can be more efficient. Now, I also, while I'm putting this together, I wanted to let you know that I already have some butter set aside for later. And I have some delicious raspberry jam left over from last year. We have a local grower that grows incredible raspberries, and every day they go out and see who wants flats of these raspberries. And I've asked to be on the end of their trap line. So at the end of the day, whatever they have left, I take them, and sometimes it's 5 pounds of raspberries, sometimes it's 50 pounds of raspberries, and I get them straight onto a cookie sheet, put them in the freezer to freeze individually, and then I bag them up, and we end up with raspberries galore, and they are big. They're the big ones, the ones that you can fit right on your thumb. They're so big. So thank you to the Quad Flakes for growing those here in the Similkameen Valley. Okay, so this is getting shaggy. I don't know how well you can see that. It's still not quite together. We just need a little splash more still, I think. We don't want this to be too goopy, because I'd like to be able to actually handle it a little bit with my hands. And if it gets too sticky, it's not going to work for us. So for those of you just joining us, if you just got your pen and paper, to recap, we're making bannock today. In the bannock, I currently have 4 cups of flour. I have 2 tablespoons of baking powder. I have about half a teaspoon of salt, but I might have been a little extra because I like the flavor. And about 1.5 to 2 cups of water. I'm adding the water in gradually so I use the right amount, not too much. Okay. Still just a little more water still. The flour does a really good job of sucking it all up, apparently. Now again, some of you tuned in first thing this morning when I did an earlier video. I had just received word at that point that there was a fire at a historic mill in Kelowna, Brent's Mill. Brent's Mill is older than our mill, but is not in its original location and doesn't have all of its original equipment. It's kind of a different beast than ours is. But when I heard that there was a fire, the early reporting suggested that it might have actually been the mill itself that burned. Turns out it wasn't. So that video, that heart-wrenching video of me talking about loss and heritage, well, it's still relevant, but it isn't entirely based on something true anymore. We know that something else burned. It was actually one of the houses on the site that has previously been gutted by a fire a couple of years ago. Anyways, so there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to knead this just a tiny little bit with my hands. And I know you can't see. This is very boring when all you see is my beard, my chest, and things moving, and I'm sorry for that. But here we have some really good looking dough. So I'm just going to give this just a quick little punch to get it mixed enough. We want this good and perfect. And then we're going to take this over to the skillet that we have on the wood stove behind me so that we can fry it up. The oil is definitely shimmering now. That's a good sign that it's nice and hot. And for all of you that are on, good morning. Doughy hands, making Bannock, very exciting. I'd share with you if you were here, but you're not. Okay, now, I'm just going to clean one of my hands off since I have to handle dough and a camera and, well, all sorts of stuff all at the same time. So let's just get the dough off my hands. Okay. Hi. Okay. So here is our dough. Looking good. Here is our very hot stove and a nice hot skillet full of oil. We'll move that over the hottest part of the heat. Oh, the smell right now of the hot vegetable oil reminds me of making popcorn at home. You know, that smell that you get when you heat up the oil and you pour the... Yeah, anyways. Okay, so using my other hand, I have my dough. We're going to... Oh my goodness, hard to do with one hand, but that's okay. That's part of the fun, right? So there's my skillet. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to spread it out. And you can see it's already boiling and bubbling. I don't want to touch that hot oil. You can use a spoon to do this. I'm crazy. You're not. Okay, there we go. You could also, yeah, there. Okay. So, we'll let that do its cooking for a little bit. It's gonna brown on the one side, and then we'll flip it over and cook it on the other side. But you can see it's nice and hot and bubbling away. Now, if you wanted to, you could put fruit in it. You could add some herbs and spices if you wanted it to be savory. You could put some cinnamon inside the dough and maybe put sugar on top of it afterwards. There's all sorts of ways that you could do this. It's just a simple bread is really what Bannock is. So let's see here. Let's keep watching. Looking pretty good. I think that's coming along nicely. Now this is not the first time that we've been in this particular structure here in our summer kitchen. For those of you that haven't seen one of the previous episodes that we filmed here, this structure exists to cook in the summertime. Just a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, it actually hit 27 degrees here in the Similkameen Valley. Not bad for the middle of April. And you can imagine when it gets that warm, it gets really difficult to turn on the oven or get the stove going because you really don't want to heat up the inside of your house. So instead, people would build these summer kitchens where you have an outside stove. This structure actually only has the one wall, which is the back. The sides on both sides here are open. So nice and airy, protected from the elements if it's raining, but otherwise a great place to do your chores that need the stove, to do your cooking, to do your baking, all through the heat of the summer. Now, I think it's just about time to give this thing a little flip. So we're going to do that in just a second here. Just going to grab a flipping tool. Again, maybe not the official flipping tool, but a good flipping tool nonetheless. We'll pretend that they had nylon spatulas back in 1877. So let's see here. Yeah, once it's cooked enough, you can lift it. Oh, let's take a little look from the other side here so that you can see what I'm looking at. So it's starting to brown, but it's not there yet. So we'll leave it for a little bit longer. Now, all right, while that's cooking, I'll show you some of the other things that we've got here, actually. So we do have some old items we don't use anymore, but there's a good old ringer. I don't know if any of you ever have got your fingers caught in one of those, or even a piece of clothing, but these work by, when you crank them, they squeeze the water out of washed clothes. No, you don't need to cook it on low. Somebody just asked if we need to cook it on low. Medium heat is fine. Even warmer than that, just keep an eye on it. The whole goal is that we want the heat to get all the way through it before it burns. So every stove is a little bit different. This heat on this stove is actually pretty intense. So I just need to keep a close eye on it, make sure it doesn't burn. If it does, live, sorry. So anyways, back to the ringer we've got here. Good old hand crank model. You can see the crank on this side. Get the bulk of the water out of your clothes before you hang them up to dry. We have a nice old glass washboard here. We have lots of other things when we look around. Some canning of all different kinds. These little babies right here are for when you wash wool socks. You put them on these to dry so that they don't shrink. These are called sock stretchers. Well, we have, what else do we have here? Some of the dried herbs from our garden. Sage and thyme and dill. Kind of mint called candy cane. We come over to the other side here. We've got all sorts of little cooking implements, different frying pans. A nice little sieve on a stand. Yeah. So let's check our Bannock again. See how we're doing. Cool. Thanks for the note, Amanda. Yes, we also can't wait for you guys to be able to come visit us again. We wish that it was tomorrow. We wish that we had confidence that we were even going to be able to open in any way this summer. We're not confident in that yet. There is the possibility that we'll find a way to be open on some kind of limited basis where everyone gets to wear a hula hoop and stay suitably far apart. We are lucky. We're outside. But it's still a genuine concern. And, people won't be sitting down for restaurant meals inside anytime soon. We won't likely be doing concerts, weddings, things like that. It's going to be a very, very different year if we even get to open at all. But we do look forward to seeing you for sure. Okay, so let's get back to the stove. Let's get our Bannock here and flip it over. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. There. Yeah, looks like it's frying up really good, getting nice and crisp. Yeah, we'll just move it. I don't know. It always feels fun to play with it just a little bit, move it around. Now, as it happens, a year ago today, I started a temporary job that actually sort of inspired these videos. A year ago today, while also running the grist mill here, I had the opportunity to work on a television show for APTN, the Aboriginal People's Television Network. And it's a show that already has a couple seasons to air. The third season will be airing soon. All about Indigenous foods and the culture of the Okanagan and surrounding areas. It's a show called Quest Out West, Wild Food. And I had the opportunity 1 year ago to work on that show. One of the things that really struck me as we were visiting all sorts of reserves through the Okanagan and the Shuswap, visiting people's homes, chatting with elders, going out to camps, doing all these kinds of things, is that almost everybody, when they hosted us, made us Bannock. The Bannock came in many different flavors, many different styles. Some was deep fried, some was baked, some was like this, done on the stovetop. But that Bannock was one of the very universal things of that whole experience. And everybody took pride in it. And everyone was just absolutely amazing. We were lucky enough to be staying in an Indigenous-owned hotel at one point for the show. And they actually served Eggs Benedict on a Bannock instead of on an English muffin. When bread came to your table, it was Bannock and not breadsticks or something like that. It was just a wonderful experience. So those are some of my Bannock memories. Now let's see, again, let's go back to the stove and see how our Bannock is doing. Looks like it's coming along. Let's, I never mind, sneaking just a little peek. It's browning. I'm sorry I didn't show you. Maybe I'll do this side so that you can see. It's starting to brown. It's starting to look okay. But we're not quite there yet. Okay. Now, when this is done, we'll take it off the stove, we'll cut it up and get it ready for eating. So, there are quite a few of you watching today. If you heard about us this morning on the radio, thanks for joining us. For those of you that don't know, at a little before 7 o'clock this morning, we were invited on with our local CBC radio affiliate to talk about our virtual field trip program and why we're doing these videos. For the record, we're doing them to provide educational opportunities for families during the time when we're all being asked to self-isolate. If I can't invite you here to come to the mill, to come on our tour, to come explore, to come learn something, there are ways that I can come to you, and this is how we're doing it. Now, if you like the work that we're doing, please consider supporting us. The way that we're still suggesting people do that is to buy a season's pass. It might not make a ton of sense in your brain that we're all locked up. Why would I buy a season's pass to a place? The truth is, it's the easiest thing for me to sell to you that, don't worry, you'll be able to use when this is all over. We've already said that if you buy a season's pass this year and we're not able to open for, say, 100 days in the year and give you a decent chance to be able to use it, we'll let you roll it over into 2021 and come and visit us then. But in the meanwhile, all of our usual ways of making money in the campground and the restaurant and doing our special events, those are all things that we're not going to be able to do for a while and aren't going to make us the money that we need to pay for the bandwidth, to pay for the lights, to pay for the internet, to pay for all the things that need to be paid for in the meantime. So if you can see fit to support us, it would be wonderful. The other thing you can do is to spread the word. Tell people about these videos. Engage with us. Comment. I see a few of you are. Good morning. And yes, I love Bannock and smoked salmon as well. I just love smoked salmon. Or dried salmon right off the racks in the Fraser Canyon. Anyways. Please engage with us. Please share this video or other videos with other people. We take all of these videos that we're making and we add them to YouTube after the fact so that you can see the archive of them and catch up on some of the ones you might have missed. One of my favorites that we've done in the last little while actually involved making this stuff right here, which is violet syrup. We picked violets out of the garden when they were in bloom just a few days ago, about a week ago, and we made a tea and made a simple syrup that has the most incredible violet flavor. So that's that. Okay, our Bannock is gotta be ready. We gotta be there now. So let's go do this. Okay. Let's take our Bannock, and I've got my skillet here. Going to bring it over to my cutting board and do a little bit of fancy juggling to make room. Let's get everything here out of the way. It's always the least exciting part when you just get to watch, my chest or my head or just my beard doing things. I can't do it all at the same time, guys. So I'm going to put that onto the cutting board. And I'm going to take you all back to the stove for a second just to put my skillet back down, my empty skillet. So here we have beautiful skillet Bannock straight off of the stove. Again, only 4 ingredients, 4 cups flour, 2 tablespoons baking powder, about a half a teaspoon or a little bit more of salt, and up to 2 cups of water to get it to the right consistency. That's all that it took. Now, for this today, I'm going to have some butter. I'm going to have some delicious raspberry jam, I think. And let's cut into this and see how it looks, shall we? Okay. It's going to be challenging to do this with 2 hands, but we'll try here. So we'll cut right in. There we go. And let's see what it looks like inside. Oh, I actually needed more time cooking. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick away at the edges and cook it for a little bit longer. I don't know. Maybe you do the same thing too at home. So anyways, that is how you make Bannock. It just takes a little more time than we took today. But I should finish up the video. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., our goal is to try and get the water turning our water wheel. We have, obviously, the whole reason that we're the grist mill is we have a 140-year-old, 143 now, water wheel powered flour mill, and we're going to get that water wheel turning for the first time this season, and hopefully we'll be able to do it live with you tomorrow morning. So we'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Please spread the word, and if you can, support us by buying a season's pass. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.